Okay, today's video we're going to simplify macronutrients, give you guidelines on how to set up your meals based on if it's pre-workout, post-workout, or anything like that. Provide you all the information on what they are and how to best structure your meals throughout the day based on whether you're working out or not working out. So let's dive into it, because a lot of people ask, what are macronutrients? And they ask, how do I best structure my meals and get the best macronutrient ratios per meal based on if I'm working out or not working out, or all these different variables, or if I'm about to sleep, or if it's the first meal of the day, all these things, right? So let's talk about it. Macronutrients are, simply put, proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Those are the three macronutrients. Fats and proteins are the essential macronutrients, meaning that carbohydrates are the only non-essential macronutrient. That just means that we don't require the consumption of carbohydrates to live, just for pure survival mechanisms. The biggest reason is because our body can actually break down and transition fats that we eat and proteins that we eat into carbohydrates. We can break it down into glucose. I don't want to get you too confused there, so we're just going to stop that conversation there. Let's talk about how many calories are in each gram. So when we talk about protein, there's 4 calories in 1 gram of protein. What that means is, if you weigh your foods and you cook up and you prepare a chicken breast, the chicken breast itself weighs 150 grams, but it contains 35 grams of protein in that 150 gram cooked chicken breast. Well, I just said that there's 35 grams of protein in it, which means that you would take 4 and multiply that by the 35 grams of protein, and that's where you would get the amount of calories of protein in that chicken breast. So just do 4 times 35. Carbohydrates have 4 calories in each gram. So what does that mean? That means the same thing. If you were to weigh sweet potato that you cooked and prepared, and there's 200 grams of sweet potato you're about to eat with that chicken breast that I said earlier, the sweet potato weighs 200 grams, but in that 200 grams of sweet potato, there's 35 grams of carbs, let's say. So you would multiply the 4 calories by the 35 grams of carbs to see how many calories of carbohydrates are in that cooked sweet potato. In fats though, fats are more dense. There's more energy. Let's actually define that. Calories are energy. So there's 9 calories in 1 gram of fat. What does that mean? That means in a smaller amount, a smaller physical amount, there's going to be more calories and more energy in higher fat foods. So as an example, you take a handful of almonds. That's why almonds are so high in calories, and that's why we have to be so cautious by not over consuming nuts, because there's a lot of fat in nuts and there's a lot of energy in 1 gram of fat. That's the main reason why they're easier to overeat, because they're snacky type foods and they contain a lot of energy. But they will keep you physically satiated. However, we ignore the physically satiation by enjoying the snacking sensation, the grab and chew, right? So there's 9 calories in each gram of fat. So if you have a handful of almonds and there's 15 grams of fat in it, well, you're going to multiply that 15 by 9. That's how you get how many calories are in the nuts. So that's that portion. Now, when we're talking about how, the question becomes, what's the best type of meal to have pre-workout? Pre-workout means before the workout. Well, that depends on a variety of factors, because it depends on how long the workout is going to be. It depends on what kind of activity you're going to do in the workout. Are you going for a run, or are you lifting weights? Other factors, of course, as well. And it also depends on when you're going to have that meal. How much time do you have to let the meal digest before the workout? So there's a lot of questions, but I'm going to try to give guidelines on it. So for pre and post-workout meals, post-workout means after the meal. So in your meal before the workout and in your meal after the workout, you'll want to have the highest amount of carbohydrates and the highest protein in those meals. When I say highest carbs and highest protein, I mean highest in comparison to the rest of the meals you're going to have throughout the day. So those should be your highest carb and highest protein meals. They should be your lowest fat meals, because in these times, we want the carbs and the proteins to be most readily available, because fats slow the digestion and the release of the nutrients that are paired with it. I'm going to say that again. Fats slow the digestion and the release of the nutrients that are paired with it. So the reason why we want high carb, high protein in those meals is because, more specifically in the post-workout meal, we are at the most highest insulin sensitive. That means our body is best at processing, digesting, and utilizing carbohydrates and storing them most favorably into muscle glycogen rather than into fat cells. This is getting complicated already. I'm sorry. It's already getting complicated. I hope you understand that. Let's just bring it back. All you need to know is that you want to consume high carb, high protein in the pre and post workout meal. I don't want to confuse you too much. Also, what you need to consider is that it's high carb, high protein in relation to the rest of your meals throughout the day. So what's considered high carb for one person is different than what's considered high carb for another person. Same goes as high protein. What's considered high protein for one person is going to be considered something totally different to another person. Now, I will give some more specific guidelines on this because, like I said, it depends on how far away you're consuming the pre-workout meal from the workout. Because if your meal is consumed 1 to 2 hours, even 3 hours before your actual workout, and that's gonna be the last meal you're having before the workout, then you actually want higher fats because it's far away enough from your workout that you do want the slowed release of the carbohydrates and the protein so you can get that consistent, stable energy source and protein, amino acids fueled into the bloodstream. If the workout is, if the meal's like 1 hour or less before the workout, then you really do want low fats when you go into that workout. And you will really do, of course, always want the higher carb, higher protein. Now, one more question I'm going to answer. What do you eat? How do you structure your meals if you're not in the pre or post-workout setting? How do you structure it? You'll actually have lower carbs, and you actually do want a protein source in as many of your meals as you can to keep a stable, steady fueling of amino acids. Because amino acids, what they do is they build up your proteins in your muscles, and they accelerate the recovery process. So we actually want the recovery process to be accelerated as much as we can. So how do we do that? We just provide a consistent amount of protein. But it doesn't mean we need to have a very high protein intake at every meal. It just means you need enough to stimulate protein synthesis. And studies show that could be anywhere from 20 to 30 grams of protein, depending on the individual. So basically, at each meal, it's good to have 20 to 30 grams of protein at each meal, as a general guideline. But again, it's going to fluctuate depending on how many calories you're going to have over the course of the entire day. It's going to fluctuate on how many meals you actually consume throughout the entire day. Because someone who eats 3 meals a day compared to someone who eats 6 meals a day, obviously the person who eats 3 meals a day is going to need to have more protein in each meal when comparing to the person who eats 6 meals a day. Because what matters most at the end of the day is the total protein intake, the total carbohydrate intake, and the total fat intake. Because the calories in the total daily protein, carb, and fat intake dictates what the totals are of your total daily caloric intake. And that's what matters most at the end of the day. What matters most at the end of the day is how many grams of carbs, protein, and fat you're consuming in conjunction with how many calories you're consuming. If your goal is fat loss, you need to be consuming less calories than your body's burning and expending. That's a fact. When we talk about these things like meal composition and meal timing, these are far down the road. They don't matter nearly as much as your total daily protein, carbs, fats, and calories for the attainment of your goals. So that's the summary of this here. That's a summary of macronutrients, and I hope you understand the importance that plays, the importance placed on total daily protein, carbs, fats, and calories, not just the amount of macronutrients consumed in each meal. That's the next more advanced level. Let me know if you have any questions on this. Shoot them down below in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.